Hi, welcome back to Danny Harris Arts. In this part 5 segment, I'm going to be painting the spots on and tipping the scales. And if you notice, if you watch part 4 and paid attention real close, you may say, hey, that looks a little different. And it is. I repainted it. And the reason is, I painted it the first time, and I painted it like a typical trout. I was following along in Josh's class, and he did it the way a typical rainbow trout looks. And the fish that I caught up on the White River this past week, they look a little different in the color. They go from the olive green that I had to these trout had almost a bronzy olive green. It was a little warmer. It had a little more brown in it, almost a bronze look. And on the one that I did in the class, below the pink line, it kind of faded into a whitish or silver belly. And on these trout up here, they have below the pink line, it's almost a golden color. So I don't know if this will show up on here. But you can notice it's got just a little bit of a gold color, and then it fades into the white on the belly. So I decided to repaint it to match it more close to the Arkansas trout. Also, the spots that Josh did in the class, which I haven't done the spots yet, he did a general look, a general average, what a typical rainbow trout would look like, which are spotted on the top, heavily spotted on the top, and there may be sparsely or to no spots along the pink stripe with just a few below it. But our trout here on the White River are heavily spotted, and he goes through that in the class where different regions, different part of the country, the spots can vary. The patterns on the tail and the fins can vary a little bit. So, but I've decided after catching these fish up here on the white last week that I'm going to make it look more like an Arkansas trout. So what I've done was, off camera, is I went back and I repainted and added just a little bit more of a darker bronzy, warmer olive green on the back. I narrowed the pink stripe a little bit, and then I added the gold tinge below the pink stripe. So I'm going to camera turned around here and get started. Okay, so what I'm going to be using is just plain old pure black. It's a matte finish. I've got it thin just a little bit, and then I have these tiny little Q-tips that I get. I bought these. You can get them anywhere, but I bought these from Matuska Taxidermy. A little bottle of them. I got some little heavier ones also that I use. They're a little bit bigger, but they're great for detail work. So I thinned the black just a little bit, and like I say, I'm going to use my reference from the trout that I caught here to do these black spots. So if you're in part of the country where there's no black along the pink, don't get mad. Because in my part of the country, on the Little Red here, they are completely covered. So not the Little Red, the White River. Well, they are on a Little Red River also. But all right, so let me get started here. And I'm going to start on the non-show side. And I'm just going in here, and I'm not making them, they're going to be irregular shaped. Because they're not perfectly round on the trout. Some of these will be kind of covered up with scale tipping when I get ready to tip the scales. I'm going to try to stay as random as I possibly can. And I'm looking at my reference. I'm going to turn around here and see it a little better. I know some guys airbrush these on, but looking at reference photos and the real thing, they're hard edged. They got a hard edge to them. I mean, they may have a little softness, and then on the head up here, they're almost round and they're a little bit bigger. And I've gone in, I don't know if you can see it, but I got some little bit lighter spots on here that I sprayed with just a little bit lighter version of the deal, so it gives it a little bit of a halo. But these spots are round. And I'm trying not to cover up that halo. And I'm even going to put a little bit on the eyeball here. So you get the idea here. I'm gonna do some off camera here, and then I'll show you a progression as I get closer. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning here is Josh Guge is going to come by at the end of this video and give me another critique on the finished piece, because I will be done with it by the end of this video. So he's going to come on and tell me what he thinks about it, tell me my strengths and weaknesses on it, and so hope you'll stick around for that. It'll be, like I say, it'll be towards the end. Messed up right there. I think got my hand in it. But I'll be able to cover it up with scale tipping. All right, I got all the spots done. Still got a little bit of wet paint down here on the end on the spots on the tail, but they're all done. Messed up a little spot down here, but I'll fix that with the scale tipping. And once I get all the scale tipping on there, that'll kind of blend in these spots with the body. I don't know if you can see this, so they won't be quite so contrasting. But anyway, I'm gonna do that inside, so the next time you see me, I'll be set up at my nice cool air-conditioned kitchen table. Okay, so I am ready to start tipping the scales, and what I'm going to be using is this metallic. It's a mica powder. This one is an extra brilliant rich gold, and I'm also going to be using the silver, and this is super bright aluminum, and it's actually aluminum. I really should be probably wearing a mask using this, but I'm not going to. And what I'll do is I've got some mineral spirits, and I'll squirt a little drop of, I've got some of the rich gold in here, and I'll just put a drop or two in there, and then mix it up with and it blends really well into a nice paint-like consistency. So I just mix it up really well. Might need another drop. And what I'm using, did I say I'm using mineral spirits? And it'll evaporate. It lets me put it on, but it'll evaporate, leaving just the gold powder. And I'll have to. Once I get it all done, I'll go in and spray a flat polyurethane on it, or a satin polyurethane on it. And I'm going to be using the same micro applicators, the tiny Q-tips that I used to put the spots on. And I've got a little bit started here. And you can see that. Let me get it where it'll kind of sparkle in the light. But you can see that where it's shiny there. And all I do is dip it in the tray here and just start putting them on the tip of the scales. And what's nice about these applicators is they're just happen to be a little bit smaller than the scales I burned on, so they're perfect for tipping, just putting a little dot of it on there. And then I'll go back over, once I get it all done, I'm going to do a light wash on top of it, because right now it's a little intense on the, let me see if I can turn this light on, see if I can see that. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's just a little bit too intense, which is fine. What I'll do is I'll go over it with a light wash on top to dull it down just a little bit. I'm not to the final, let's see, can you see that? Yeah, but I'm not to the final color that I'm going to be here. This is going to have just a little bit more of a bronzy, to the warm side of olive green. So I'm going to get started here, and I'm just going to do the top third of the body, the top of the head, and the top third of the body. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of the silver in it as I start coming down the side, and I may go back to a little bit more gold once I get down here in the gold area. So I'm gonna get started, let you watch me do a few of these, and then I'll do a lot of it off camera, and then I'll show you progress as I go. Gotta get my eyes on here. And this is where keeping a good scale pattern comes in handy, because if you look at these, let me show you on this. If you look at these, it's almost in a line. These scales almost look like they form lines going up. Get the glare off of that where you can see it. But they're forming these little lines, and that's where I'm, with my scales on right, it'll make that formation. Kind of see that. So, all right, enough yammering. I'm gonna keep on going here. See, I'm not worried about these spots, because if you look at the scales real close, they kind of overlap some of these spots. I may go back and touch up some of them to bring them out a little bit, but if you look real close, I'm going to show you this again. If you look real close at the scales, the spots aren't round. They're kind of oblong shape, and then they'll have scales covering the spot. Some of the, I don't know if that shows up or not, but there's a scale overlapping the black spot. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm trying to, that's the look I'm trying to get here. Like I say, I'll come back and with some of it, and I'll retouch the black just so that they, you know, if they're not showing well enough. I made them bigger. I made the spots actually bigger than what I thought they should be, because I knew some of them will be covered. All right, you can kind of see, it's harder to see on camera than it is in person here. I can't get the light just right where you can see that reflective surface. You can kind of see where I've stopped right here, where it's shiny here and not there. And then on top of the head, you can see the line there where I've stopped, and of course I'll wrap that around. And here's a flank side, and you can see, I think you can see a little bit there, and I've touched up on the cheeks just a little bit here, so they've got reflective, and I'll be adding some more pinkish powder to those cheeks to make them a little more pink. In reality, this is about 3 days of working on it. Let me get this closer, you can see what I'm doing here. I'll get a couple inches done, 1 or 2 inches, and then I'll go out and I'll spray it with the polyurethane matte finish to set this color, because with the mineral spirits in here, they'll dry up. The mineral spirits will kind of dry up and it'll leave, this will turn crusty, and I just put a couple drops of mineral spirits in it, and then it goes right back to the liquid paint type texture consistency. And a little bit of this goes a long way.
And mixing it, is the consistency of it's important also. If you mix it too thin, it'll leach out and spread too easy. And if you mix it too thick, it'll leave a little bump. What you want it to do is to just barely come off the applicator when you touch it and stay in place and still be flush with the scale.
These little Q-tips, little micro applicators, I don't know if you can see that on the tray, they're perfect scale shape. See if I can see it show that. The tiny tips are perfect scale shape. And I can do 4 or 5 scales before I have to reapply it. To kind of give you an idea how that's going there. You can kind of see, and the colors are more intense because once you get these scale tippings on here, it kind of fade, doesn't really fade the color, but it covers up some of that intensity. So I'll turn the camera off here and get rolling on it, and I'll show you some more when I get closer to the end, because there is a little, this is something else that I've never noticed before. Let's see if I can get this up here where you can see this, the transition from where the scale stopped to the tail. There's a little scalloped edge there. I don't know if you can see that. And if you can see that little, there's just a little scalloped edge where the scales kind of come up on each spine just slightly. So I'm gonna try to mimic that too.
Okay, so I got all the scale tipping done, and I'm just going to go back over some of these black spots just to reinforce them, bring them out just a little bit more on some of them that may have been covered up too much. Next, I'm going to be doing some thin washes, color washes over the top, give it even more iridescence, and I'm going to be using this. I'm going to start with the pink. And I'm going to use this pearl red and this pearlized white and make some pink to kind of enhance the pink stripe on the side. I'm also going to mix some of this blue violet Pearl X powder in with the red, just to give it just a little extra iridescence. And I'm putting just a tiny bit on the brush. It's going to be almost a dry brush technique. You can almost see it as it goes on here. I'm just doing very, very light applications of it. And I may do 1 or 2 coats of it. And by doing this dry brush technique, it's going on so thin that the silver from the highlights of the scale tipping still shows through nice on the sides of it. So it's not covering any of that up. It may dull it down just a tiny bit, but you can still see the iridescence through the paint application here. So now I'm going to use some of this, more of this blue Pearl X pigment powder, and this is a violet with a blue shit. It's a dual tone, so it's got violet the way you look at it one way, and then tilt it a little bit, and I have a blue cast. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that down this pink stripe, and then I'll set it with a light application of polyurethane spray. Now I'm going to use just a little bit of this Deco Art metallic purple, and it's got kind of a pearl shade to it. And then again, I'm just going to do a very light dry brush technique on it, just to give just a tiny bit of a purple iridescent flavor. Next, I'm going to mix up bronze wash to go over the back, on top of the back, and this is going to do two things. It's going to give it that bronze color, and it's also going to kind of mute the gold, the intensity of the gold scale tipping on the back. It'll still show through, but it's just going to kind of knock it back a little bit. And I'm just using olive green with a little bit of burnt sienna, some red, and I actually put a little gold in this also that I didn't show, but there is a little gold in it as well. So again, this is just going to be a real thin wash, maybe a couple layers along the back. Now I'm going to give this little gold area down below the pink stripe here just a little bit of a shimmer from some brilliant gold acrylic. This is Deco Art, and I'm just going to be, again, dry brushing it on. I'm also going to add just a little bit of this gold mica powder in it to give it just a little bit of extra gold iridescence down there. So now we're going to take this black, this little applicator, and I'm going to go back over some of these black spots to kind of bring them back out. Since now I've got the bronze wash on this, I want to kill too much of the black, so I'm going to bring some of the spots back. So now I'm going to use some of this deep cherry red to give these pelvic fins a little wash of red, because they're almost a blood red. I'm just going to put a slight wash of red over the top of them. It might be a little too strong, but I don't know. It looks alright. Okay, so I'm going to finish up putting this red on here. This is the final step. Then I'm going to give it a good coat of polyurethane. And then I'm going to send some pictures of it to Josh, and he's going to give me a video critique, like I talked about at the first of the video. And what it's going to do is he's going to tell me what he thinks about it. He's going to tell me my strengths and weaknesses. And I'm looking forward to that. So if you'll stick around to the end of the video, as soon as I get this wrapped up, we'll have him on.
Hey Danny, how you doing? Thanks for sending me the pictures of your rainbow. Really looks nice. You did a great job following along in the class, and I think one of the smartest things you did was go and catch some real rainbow trout before you finish painting yours, because it really, I think that really enhanced the look of the finished trout by going out in nature and taking a hard look at what's really out there and adding it to your fish. I think that was great. As far as a couple things you can touch up around the face, adding a little bit of white edge on some of those anatomy lines on the face, like you did around the mouth, to get those things to pop out, because they're kind of hard to see in the pictures. But like some of the colors you added, I saw on the fins and around the face, some of that detail. The more detail you add around the eye and the face, the more connection you'll have with the viewer, the more realistic, the more character you'll get out of that fish, which you're trying to get a whole lot of emotion out of that fish. So I would encourage you to continue to do that. As far as the composition of the piece, I'd work on that a little bit. Your fish is kind of off to the left side of the base. Visually, it looks like it's going to tip over. It's actually a pretty easy fix. You can chop part of that branch and bring the fish closer over the base, so it doesn't look like visually it's going to tip over. I think the colors of the rock look great. You got some good color in there, and they're subtle. They're not too distracting from the fish. I would slightly alter the branch as far as it's very dark. It's almost comes across as black. It doesn't look natural as far as something that had been sitting in the water. A quick, easy fix is to dry brush some lighter tones on that rock, lighter earthy colors, to tone it down a little bit so it's not so dark, so stark. Otherwise, it's a great piece. I think you did a great job.
Okay, that's going to be it for part 5 of the Rainbow Trout Wood Carving Project. We really want to thank Josh Guge for coming by and giving me a final critique on the piece. In case you missed it, he also came by in part 3 and gave me a critique on the pre-paint stage of over the stage up to pre-paint for that part of the project. Just a little recap on Josh. Josh is a world-renowned bird and fish carver. He's won multiple world titles in both bird and fish carvings. He's taught carving workshops all over the country, and he's just a phenomenal artist and instructor. I met Josh last year at the World Taxidermy Fish Carving Championship, where I was entered in the novice division, and I won first place for largemouth bass and also won best in show. Didn't carry any prizes, which that's okay, because the experience of it all was well worth the trip up there in the first place. But Josh was kind enough to give me a certificate to take one of his workshops, and unfortunately I couldn't go take one in person, but I did get online and see that he was painting, looked at the schedule and saw rainbow trout, and I said, hey, that's the one I want to do. So here we are. But I'm going to put Josh's contact information in the comment section below, and if you're interested in taking a course of his, go check out the schedule and get in contact with him. I promise you won't be disappointed, and you can't go wrong taking one of his classes. You'll learn a ton. I know I learned a lot in this one. But overall, I'm happy with the project. There's a few things I know I would do different on the next one, and I do that on every project. I always learn something, and I say, okay, mental note, don't do that next time. Which there's several instances on here. I didn't show them all. I broke the fin off and broke the top of the dorsal fin off, had to glue it back on. Broke off the pectoral fin, had to glue it back on. I wish I'd have taken a little more time tipping the scales. It's kind of sloppy in a couple areas, but like I say, overall I'm happy with it, and I think it's one of my better pieces so far. But again, it'll be something I learn on the next one. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them for me in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up. It helps this channel grow, and I appreciate it. And I'll see y'all on the next project, which I think is going to be a bluegill. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.